There's something about early mornings that feels sacred. The world hasn't fully woken up yet, and for a brief moment, you feel like you're allowed to exhale. That morning was one of those moments. The sun had just started to warm the edges of my kitchen window. My coffee was steaming, rich and calm in its aroma, almost meditative. And for the first time in a while, my shoulders weren't clenched, but pieces fragile. The knock came like a slap to that quiet. Not soft, not hesitant, or demanding. Like it owned the right to interrupt my stillness. I froze for a second, mug in hand, heart slowing just enough to brace. 'Cause deep down, already knew. I opened the door, and there she was. Ashley. Blonde, polished, grinning like a girl who thought she'd just won a prize. But the prize was my home. She held up a piece of paper like it was a golden ticket and said with a sparkle in her eye, "You need to start packing, Jessica. We're moving in. Now let's pause here for a second. Because in life there are two kinds of knocks. The kind that asks gently, and the kind that demands like it already decided your fate. That knock. It didn't just break the silence. Tried to break me. But here's the thing they don't teach you when your world falls apart. You get to choose how to answer that knock. With fear, with rage, or with a quiet kind of power that comes from knowing something they don't. And I knew something Ashley didn't. What she couldn't see, standing just behind her, was my lawyer. Not just a man in a suit, but a symbol of everything I had rebuilt. Quietly, strategically, piece by piece, while they thought I was just surviving. That moment, standing in the doorway, I realized something. This wasn't just her mistake. It was his underestimation. Their fantasy built on a lie. And my beginning, wrapped in legal documents they had never bothered to read. You see, that knock was never going to break me. Because I had already learned to answer it with grace. And with facts. Ashley stepped into my home like she already owned it. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floors I once stained by hand. Her eyes scanned the walls that still held photos I hadn't taken down. She had the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. But here's what Ashley didn't know. She was walking into a house that never stopped being mine. As she strutted in, waving her little piece of paper like it was gospel, I stood quietly, letting her believe whatever version of the story Mark had told her. My lawyer followed in behind, calm and collected, a file in his hand and the truth in his back pocket. Ashley spun toward me and said, "Mark said he transferred ownership. This house is his now. You have no legal right to stay." I smiled, not out of arrogance but out of something deeper. The kind of smile you wear when you've waited a long time to stop playing small. Then came the reveal. My lawyer opened his folder slowly, deliberately. He adjusted his glasses and said with practiced ease, "Miss Ashley, this house was never in Mark's name. Not before. Not during the marriage. Not after the divorce. He had no authority to transfer what he never owned." Ashley froze. And in that moment you could see it. The dawning. The unraveling. The slow collapse of a fantasy built on fraud. She blinked. "That's not true," she said, still gripping the false deed like it could save her. But truth doesn't flinch. I walked over to the side table and picked up the original papers. Real ones. Notarized. Witnessed years ago. "This house was left to me by my grandmother," I said softly. "I never added Mark to the deed." Yes, more than once. But I said no. And now you understand why. Let me pause here to say this. Sometimes protecting yourself doesn't look dramatic. It looks like quietly keeping your name on a title. It looks like reading every line of a document they tried to rush you through. It looks like saying no when everything in you wants to say yes just to keep the peace. And in a world that still teaches too many women to be agreeable, patience with paperwork is an act of power. I've heard so many stories like mine. Friends, neighbors, even women I met through support groups. They gave up their financial voice in a marriage out of trust. And they paid for it when things fell apart. But I learned early, after one too many ignored red flags, That love doesn't mean giving someone full access to your foundation. No, I wasn't lucky. I was prepared. And as Ashley's smile cracked, as her voice trembled for the first time, I knew I hadn't just saved my home. I'd saved myself. Before Ashley. Before the fake deed. Before my lawyer stood in my living room flipping through documents like a magician with a trick up his sleeve. There was us, me and Mark. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of building something, or at least thinking we were. When I look back now, I realize it wasn't one big betrayal that broke us. It was a slow drip. Like a leak under the sink that you ignore. Until one day the whole cabinet's rotten. He didn't always lie. Not at first. He used to bring me coffee in bed. He'd kiss my forehead and say he was proud of me. Even when I left a high-paying job to open my little boutique. But then the little parts started to matter to him. Suddenly my boutique wasn't a dream, it was a hobby. Suddenly his late nights weren't for us. They were away from us. I saw the signs. The silent phone calls in the hallway. The sudden urgency to go for a drive on Sunday nights. The money disappearing from our joint account. But not a single explanation that made sense. Here's the truth that's hard to admit out loud. I wanted to believe in us more than I wanted to believe in reality. And that's where many of us go wrong. We trade red flags for hope. We rewrite warnings as misunderstandings. We believe that love will fix it, even when the foundation is already cracked. I remember once, I asked him if we could sit down and revisit our budget. His response, "Why don't you trust me?" And I backed off. Because that's what we're taught, isn't it? That questioning a man's decisions makes us difficult. That protecting ourselves is somehow unromantic. But let me be clear about something I wish someone had told me back then. Love without boundaries isn't noble. Dangerous. Gives people the license to take more than they give. To turn partnership into power imbalance. It wasn't until I saw Mark with Ashley at that restaurant, the place I used to call our Friday night spot, that everything clicked. The way he held her hand. The way he laughed like he hadn't carried the weight of the world in years. And the way I felt nothing but stillness. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat with it. Because by then, part of me already knew. And so that night I did something I had never done before. I opened a new folder on my computer. I labeled it My Exit. I started tracking every document, every dollar, every asset. Found a lawyer. Quietly. I started planning. Not out of rage. Not even out of heartbreak. But out of something far more powerful. Self-respect. You see, the biggest miscalculation Mark made wasn't cheating on me. It was thinking I would fall apart quietly. That I wouldn't fight. That I wouldn't learn. But I did. And while he was busy building a fantasy with Ashley, I was building my freedom. And the moment she put that phone to her ear, and called him, expecting congratulations, that was the moment his whole fantasy came crumbling down. It was supposed to be a girls' night. Laughter, wine, maybe a little too much dancing. A night to forget the strain I'd been carrying. To feel just for a few hours like me again. My friend had picked the restaurant. I hadn't questioned it. And as we walked in, I remember thinking, tonight will be different. Tonight will be light. But fate has a sharp sense of humor. We were just being seated when I saw him, Mark, at the back corner table, with Ashley. His hand was resting on hers. Their heads leaned close. And he was laughing, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from him in years. Not at home. Not with me. In that moment, time slowed. I didn't gasp. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't march over and throw a drink in his face, though every TV show had trained me to do just that. Instead, I stared. And then I blinked. And then I exhaled. Like I'd just read the last line of a novel I'd been trying not to finish. There's this myth in our culture, that the louder your pain, the more justified it is. That if someone betrays you, you have to explode to prove it mattered. But I didn't scream. Because I knew something that changed everything. I didn't need to catch him in order to confront him. I needed to see it, to finally stop defending what was already broken. That night, I didn't even stay for dinner. I hugged my friend, made some excuse about a headache, and went home. But I didn't collapse. I opened my laptop. I logged into our accounts. I started taking screenshots. That was the moment I went from heartbroken wife to quiet strategist. Let me share something that stayed with me since then. You don't have to match their betrayal with noise. You can answer it with clarity. And you can turn heartbreak into a paper trail. I've seen women lose everything because they reacted before they protected themselves, because they believed that being right would be enough. But the truth is, being prepared is what gives you power. So yes, I caught him red-handed. But I didn't fight him in public. I fought him where it counted, behind the scenes. With documents. With lawyers. With a calm he never saw coming. And while he was toasting his new fantasy, I was drawing the blueprint for his undoing. So when Ashley hit dial and handed me the phone, she had no idea what she was setting in motion. Ashley was still standing in the middle of my living room. Her smile trembling now, her posture a little less certain. She clutched that fake deed like it was going to save her. Like words printed on a page could somehow override the truth carved into years of quiet preparation. She repeated it again, this time almost pleading. Mark said the house was his. He said he transferred it. He said, "You didn't have a choice." I stepped closer, calm and clear. "Did he show you the real deed? The title?" She blinked. I already knew the answer. My lawyer flipped through the folder in his hands like he was flipping through history. And in many ways he was. Because years ago, long before Mark ever confessed a single affair, I had refused to put his name on the title of the house. Yes, multiple times. Said it was just paperwork. Said it would make things easier. But something deep inside me, a quiet inner voice I didn't know I could trust back then, told me not to. And for once, I listened. The house was a gift from my grandmother. Paid off. Protected. I had it notarized. Filed. Tucked away like a sleeping sword. And now, had woken up. "You see," my lawyer said gently, addressing Ashley like a patient explaining a complicated diagnosis. "This house was never Mark's to give. Not before, not during, and certainly not after the divorce." Ashley's face paled. She looked like someone who had walked confidently onto a stage, only to realize she didn't know her lines. And the spotlight was no longer flattering. Let me say something that might help someone listening right now. People can lie to your face, but legal documents don't lie. If you're building a life with someone, protect the pieces that matter. Don't let love be a reason to leave yourself exposed. Because trust is not a legal strategy. And romance doesn't hold up in court. I've seen too many stories. Friends, clients at my boutique, even strangers who message me online, who gave away everything simply because they thought signing it over meant proving they cared. Let me be blunt. Loyalty does not require financial surrender. And in my case, that truth saved everything I had worked for. Ashley's hands were shaking now. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The realization was sinking in. She'd been sold a dream, built on a lie. And now she was standing inside a home she had no legal right to even enter. But I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply stepped aside and let the truth take the floor. Because the most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to take what's yours is prove with calm clarity that they never had a claim in the first place. And just when I thought it couldn't get better, Ashley did the one thing I had hoped she would. She called him, put Mark on speakerphone, ready to share the good news. She thought he was going to celebrate, but instead she handed him the rope. "Before we go any further, I want to pause for a second and ask you something. Have you ever had someone try to take what you built with your own two hands? A home, a dream, your peace of mind. How did it make you feel? Drop a comment below and tell me, in one word or one sentence, what part of this story has hit home for you so far. Your voice matters here, and sometimes just sharing it is part of healing. Now let's keep going because this story is far from over. Ashley was unraveling, right there on my living room floor. Her face flushed, her hands shaking, the once perfect facade slipping with every word my lawyer spoke. And then she did it. She reached for her phone like it was a life vest and hit dial. Beaker on. Volume up. Waiting for the man who had fed her this fantasy to pick up and make sense of the mess. The phone rang once. And then, his voice, smug and self-assured, came through the speaker. "Hey babe. Everything good?" Ashley didn't waste a second. "You lying piece of garbage," she shouted, her voice rising like a wave crashing. "You said the house was yours. You said we were moving in. You told me she was out. Gone, done." There was a pause. Long one. And I could feel him blinking on the other end of the line. What? Let me pause here to say something. Liars are never ready for their lies to meet each other in the same room. They count on silence and distance. They never plan for the day the truth has an audience. And Mark. He had no idea his entire performance was being broadcast in real time. Ashley spun toward me, eyes wild. Tell him what your lawyer just said." I didn't flinch. I took a slow sip of my coffee and said calmly, "Hi Mark. Interesting day, isn't it?" His voice came back, but this time it was thinner, more strained. "Wait, what's going on?" Ashley gritted her teeth, nearly shaking with rage. "She still owns the house, Mark. It was never yours. You lied to me." I could almost hear his stomach drop through the phone. No, there's gotta be some kind of mistake. I filed the paperwork. You filed nothing." Ashley cut him off. "You lied to me. You said we'd be starting fresh in this beautiful home. You promised me we were set." Mark's words tumbled out, desperate, disjointed. "I was going to fix it. I just needed more time. You don't understand. Here's the thing. Liars always have one more excuse. One more spin. One more delay. But eventually, they run out of space to hide." Ashley stared down at her phone like it had betrayed her too. And then she laughed. Bitter, hollow sound. "Oh my God," she said. "You really have nothing, don't you?" And that's when something shifted. You could see it in her face. For the first time, Ashley wasn't angry at me, she was angry at him. She was waking up. Because when the story starts falling apart, the villain isn't always the ex-wife. Sometimes, it's the man who sold you a dream he never owned. I watched it unfold without saying much. Because some truths don't need a narrator. They just need time. If someone needs to lie to make you feel secure, you were never safe with them to begin with. Ashley ended the call. No dramatic goodbye. Just a click. And then silence. And in that silence, I saw something unexpected. Her regret. Her humiliation. And maybe, just maybe, her first step toward something real. But what happened next? That was something I never saw coming. 'Cause just 2 days later, she was back at my door. Ashley ended the call with a trembling hand. She didn't say another word. Just stood there in the middle of my living room, staring down at her phone like it had betrayed her too. Her face, a blend of shock, rage, and something else. Something harder to admit. She'd been used. Played. And in the rawness of that moment, I thought she might cry. Instead, she turned to me, eyes blazing. "This was your plan all along," she snapped. "You set me up." And blinked once. "Excuse me. It's a funny thing, how quickly people turn their anger onto the wrong target. When someone's illusion falls apart, they don't always blame the liar. Sometimes, they blame the mirror. And I had become her mirror. Not her enemy. Not the villain. Just the one who refused to keep pretending. "You wanted me to see this," she continued. "You let me humiliate myself. You wanted me to walk into this trap." I could have argued. Could have shouted back. Could have listed every betrayal she was complicit in. But instead, I just folded my arms and said gently, "Ashley, I didn't force you to come here. You showed up at my home. With his lies." Let's pause for a moment here. This is a pattern I've seen more times than I can count. When the truth finally hits, when the house of cards collapses. The person who's been deceived wants so badly for it to be someone else's fault. Because anger feels stronger than shame. And blame feels easier than accountability. It's human. It's messy. And it's also not your responsibility to absorb. I've watched friends go through this. I've read hundreds of comments from women who were blamed for breaking up relationships they never asked to be part of. Women who were just standing in their truth. Who became lightning rods for someone else's storm. But here's the lesson I want to leave you with. You are not responsible for someone else's denial. You are not the villain in someone else's lie. And just because they're loud doesn't mean they're right. Ashley stared at me, searching for a place to anchor her pain. But I wouldn't give her one. I stayed calm, kind even. Because I didn't need to win that moment. I'd already won the war. And after a long pause, her fire started to fade. Her shoulders dropped. She looked down, then back up. And without another word, she walked out. I watched her leave. And I'll be honest, part of me felt nothing. Not joy. Not revenge. Just relief. Because I had spent years taking responsibility for everyone else's emotions. That day, I gave that weight back. And I thought that was the end of it. Until she came back. But this time not with papers. Not with threats. She came back with something else entirely. 2 days passed. Just enough time for the air to settle. For me to return to my quiet mornings and soft warm cups of coffee. I had told myself that was it. That Ashley's meltdown would be the final chapter. She'd walk away. Start over. Or run back to the man who broke us both. But then came the second knock. This one wasn't loud. It wasn't sharp or entitled. It was soft, hesitant, like someone who wasn't sure they even deserved to be answered. Opened the door. And there she was. Ashley. But not the version I had met before. Gone was the lipstick-perfect confidence. Gone were the designer heels and the smug smile. She looked tired. Her eyes were red. Her hair undone. Like someone who had spent 2 days asking herself every hard question in the mirror. And getting no easy answers. I stayed silent. She hesitated, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. And then, almost in a whisper, she said, "I'm sorry." Now I've heard apologies before. The kind that are soaked in excuses. The ones that try to share the blame or explain away the hurt. But this one was different. She didn't defend herself. She didn't cry for attention. She just stood there, raw and vulnerable. "I believed him," she said softly. "He told me you were cold, controlling, that you didn't support him, that you were bitter and jealous. And I believed it. I thought I was different. I thought he wouldn't do to me what he did to you." She looked down. But he did. And worse. And in that moment, I saw something I hadn't expected to see in her. The girl I used to be. Blinded by charm. Hoping love could rewrite red flags. Desperate to be the one who changed him. But she wasn't. And neither was I. Because people don't change for the next person, they change when they want to. And Mark never did. Ashley went on. He took my money. Maxed out my credit cards. Said I was too much when I needed help with rent. And when I asked him where we were going to live, he said I was holding him back. She laughed then. A sad, self-aware kind of laugh. I left everything for him. And he left me with nothing. Let me pause to say this. Sometimes the people who hurt you aren't monsters. They're broken. But that doesn't mean you have to be the one to fix them. And sometimes the ones who replace you aren't your enemies. They're just the next chapter in the same sad story. I studied Ashley's face. And for the first time I didn't see a threat. I saw a woman standing in the same rubble I once crawled through. So I asked gently, "So what now?" She wiped her cheek and gave a small shrug. "I don't know. But I'm done with him. I just needed to say I was wrong. And I'm sorry." I didn't rush to forgive her. But I nodded. 'Cause I understood. And sometimes that's enough. But the healing didn't stop there. Because a week later she came back again. And this time she didn't come to apologize. She came to tell me something that truly surprised me. A week later, Ashley walked into my boutique. Not with tension, not with apologies, just presence. She stood near the entrance for a moment, her hands loosely clasped, scanning the little space I had poured my heart into. Soft jazz played from the speaker. The scent of fresh linen and lavender hung gently in the air. Sunlight spilled through the window, illuminating handmade scarves and candles lined up like quiet victories. She walked up to the counter and smiled. Not wide, not forced. Just enough. "I got a job," she said. "Oh." I raised an eyebrow. "Marketing assistant," she nodded. "It's not much, but it's mine. And I earned it. No shortcuts. No him." I smiled back, slow, sincere. Because that mattered. 'Cause she mattered. It hit me in that moment. I had built a life that Mark couldn't touch. Not because I won a court battle. Not because I exposed him. But because I chose to heal beyond him. I didn't just survive. I created something. My boutique, once dismissed by Mark as a cute little hobby, now had 3 locations. Regular customers. Online orders. A small team of women who'd each overcome something to get here. This wasn't revenge by fire. This was revenge by flourishing. Let me tell you something I've come to believe deeply. The real revenge is not in making someone pay for what they did to you. It's in showing them they never had the power to stop who you were becoming. Because you can drain my bank account. You can walk out and take your promises with you. But you can't take my growth. You can't take my peace. Ashley lingered at the counter, her eyes drifting to a silk scarf. She picked it up, ran her fingers across the fabric, then said, "You know, I don't know how you put up with him for so long." Chuckled. "Honestly, I don't either." There was a pause. Then she said it. "I know I don't deserve it. But maybe one day we could be friends." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Not as the woman who replaced me, but as someone who had been broken too, and decided to do something brave with the pieces. I gave her a gentle smile. "Not friends, but maybe one day." She nodded, bought the scarf, and walked out with quiet dignity. And as the doorbell chimed behind her, I realized something beautiful. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about freeing yourself from having to carry it anymore. And just when I thought the story was finally closed, I saw him again. Not at court, not in my inbox, but at a gas station, with a car falling apart and a look I'll never forget. It was one of those ordinary days. Quick stop for gas. Wind in my hair, a coffee in the cup holder, a to-do list waiting quietly in my purse. I wasn't thinking about him. Not even a little. But that's the funny thing about closure. It usually finds you when you're not searching for it. I pulled into the station, stepped out of my car, and there he was. Mark. Leaning against a rusted sedan. Phone in one hand, frustration on his face. Thinner. Paler. Not the man I had married. Not even the man who had left me. Just a man who looked like he'd run out of charm and places to land. Our eyes met just for a second. And in that moment, I saw the truth written across his face like a confession he couldn't say out loud. She got everything, and I have nothing. But the part he never understood was that I didn't take anything from him. I just stopped letting him take from me. He looked like he wanted to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I gave him a small, calm nod. Not bitter, not smug, just peace. And then I turned back to my car, started the engine, and drove away. Let me tell you what that moment taught me. You don't need a dramatic ending to feel whole. Sometimes, healing looks like driving away without needing an explanation. Sometimes power is silence. And growth is knowing you don't need the last word. Years later, my boutique would grow into 3 new locations. I'd hire women who had been through storms of their own. Divorce, betrayal, reinvention. We'd laugh about second chances and share tips on fabric and forgiveness. In my office, above my desk, there's a framed quote. Simple. Fitting. It reads, "Don't look back, unless it's to see how far you've come." And now, dear listener, if you've come this far, I hope this story reminded you of something important. You are not defined by who left, who lied, or who underestimated you. You are defined by what you build after. Thank you so much for staying with me through this story. If it touched something in you, you're not alone. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming dignity, about rising after being broken, about choosing to build when someone tried to tear you down. The real win isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were always enough. Now I'd love to hear from you. Speech balloon, drop a comment below. What did you feel while listening to Jessica's journey? Did it remind you of anything in your own life? And if this story made you feel stronger, wiser, or even just seen, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. There's more where this came from. Stories that heal. Stories that empower. Stories that remind you you're never as alone or as powerless as they made you believe. Until next time, take care of your heart,